All right, welcome to another episode of Clicks Happen podcast. My name is Nick Adams, and today's guest is Nicholas Henkey. He works at one of the biggest banks in the country, but don't let that corporate title fool you. Nicholas has a deep love for small business and a sharp eye for the kind of hidden data most owners don't realize they're sitting on. From tire shops to marketing agencies, he's seen the power of integrating messy systems and leveraging mundane details in marketing. If you want to know what enterprise companies are doing with AI and how that might trickle down to you, this episode might be for you. So with that, Nick, welcome. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank
How
you,
are
Nick.
you?
Good. It's the fall weather is set in here in Virginia, so it's beautiful. Nice to go out on walks and have it be 65 out.
Starting to bundle a little.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Well, great. Well, I wanted to hopefully start by just getting a little bit of your background for the audience. Just talk a little bit through, your early beginnings in software, in just your career, and then kind of building up to the present day, where you're at today and kind of what you're doing.
Absolutely. I started off in my corporate career at a company called Kumho Tire. And while they're a multi-billion international conglomerate, the US office was about 40 people. And what I was hired to do was help unblock issues for our direct customers, at least in the beginning. And a lot of that involved looking through the data, combing through the data, hearing about a customer complaint, and then figuring out where those problems were occurring by using a lot of our data that was housed in SAP. We did a lot of spreadsheet work, so I got really good at kind of merging data together, figuring out how to find the keys to create that juncture of data. Back before I knew what a primary key was, because that knowledge came much later, but kind of intuitively understanding how to do those things, resolving largely logistics issues until a couple of years in. I ended up having full ownership of a rebate program for our secondary dealers. So in this case, we would sell to a direct customer and then they would sell to a secondary dealer, and we would give them bonuses for hitting certain targets.
Okay.
And it was a very manual process cutting those checks. And we decided to productize it. And then my career kind of started going a lot more down a software path after that. And we can talk about that in detail, but ultimately I ended up working for the contractor that built that productized item. They were a small company, and I really enjoyed my time, especially at the small company, just because the camaraderie in a small company is
Sure.
so strong.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So what I heard was you worked with a lot of disparate systems that had a lot of data nested in it, and part of your job was to combine and make sense of a mess of different data sets, different databases, and then relay that in a cohesive manner to either give insight on sales or help with distribution.
Yes, the logistics data was all in the same system, but it didn't talk to each other.
Got it.
We would pull the information out, and then we would merge it all together to tell a story of what was going on. The dealer rebate program, that was a lot of disparate data, various spreadsheets that were being emailed that we eliminated to get all of that information into the centralized system.
Sure.
And things took off from there.
I like the word productize. We use that a lot. Can you explain a little bit behind what do you mean when you say we took this program and then we productized it? What do you mean when you say that word productized?
I mean that we made it into a cohesive software system that had the various triggers and reward incentives to get people to be engaged with the program as a whole.
Okay.
So I can go through the story of what we did with that that dealer program, that would probably give a better picture of how exactly we productized that
Yeah,
program.
let's do that because I think that what I like about productization of a system or a process is what you're really doing is you're saying, let's formalize this for prime time. Let's make this repeatable. Let's make this something that we can potentially sell or leverage. But it usually is born from, kind of the way that you described it. It's like we started this thing, it started working. It was either a way to relieve pain or to give us some kind of a financial benefit. And we, like a lot of things that get productized, they were just kind of an idea and then an MVP. And then from there, you start saying, okay, how do we make this solid so that we can either resell it? Maybe that's not reselling in your case, but it's develop it so that we can do this with many, many resellers, maybe across the country that are all not the same thing, but then deliver somewhat of a same result. Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah, talk through that whole process.
Yeah, so the dealer program of rebates to secondary dealers, when you're a manufacturer, there's different paths you can go down. You can go directly to retail, or you can go to distributors who then sell to retailers. For brand growth, you really want to be in retail because the boots on the ground are the people who can talk up your product and talk about how great it is. And the company had a, a good mix of retail and distribution, but mainly Kumo at the time was focused largely on distribution because you could do a lot of volume really quickly with distributors if you needed to. And in order to get pull through for motivated retailers, you needed the individual tire shops to be engaged with your product, to think it's a great product, and to have an incentive to sell it. So if people sold a certain number of products, we would give them a rebate. That does a few other things. It triggers the automatic ordering system for very advanced distributors because they have software systems that automatically determine, hey, we've sold this many units. This is the velocity. We need to keep this many in stock. Uh, and then also for users, people who drive cars and need fresh tires on their cars, they talk to their tire shop and they hear that you have a great product. There were a couple of problems with it, with the way that we were doing it in spreadsheets. One of them was it was a little bit error prone. We had one accident when we had to have someone other than me do the processing with the advanced formulas and everything, where we had a bit of a sorting error that later got resolved, fortunately, before it became a big issue. Um, and then the other thing was is we had to wait for our direct customers to email us the lists of who bought what. And so by the time months had passed, people would see, I'm getting a check in the mail for Q2, but we're almost in Q4. Like, what's the
Right.
disconnect here? And so the first step was that uh, I did something which is radical for most people in the millennial generation and younger, which was talking directly to the customers and and
Right.
figuring out, hey, can you just send this to us digitally in real time? And the customers, by and large, said, uh, "We're surprised it took you so long to ask." And so we got the data in, and we had it incorporated into the SAP system, so we could run a report and see things live every day. And I was really excited because
Yeah.
I was fresh in the corporate world, running this $2 million at the time product or program, and um, so I was checking it every day, and I saw, hey, these people are getting really close. So again, I picked up the phone, gave them a phone call, and said, hey, you're 4 units away, and you're going to get a $500 check if you place that order before the end of next week. Called two dealers, they ordered immediately, and then presented those findings to management. My goal, what I was aiming at, was, hey, let's build a software product that allows these people to automatically check and self-engage. So a
Sure.
low calorie way to get that pull through that the company was aiming for, to get those dealers that loved our product and would present it in a positive light to our customers. Management had different ideas. They really uh, they wanted to prove a full business case, and so they brought in a significant number of my coworkers to call every single dealer on the list
Okay.
and get them to buy. And what we found was not only marginal dealers, but even dealers that were a bit further off ended up making the cut. And we ended up with a 37% increase in dealers that got their rebates. That only correlated to about an 8% increase in sales. But it proved that this program, if you could do it real time and you could make sure that people saw how much money they were going to get and when, that they would engage.
Right.
The rest is history. We contracted with a small company I used to work for, which is Ignite Design and Advertising. They used our data to build out the dealer portal to make sure that people could monitor everything and self engage to get that pull through we were aiming for.
Man, I love that example because I think and one thing I should mention is that Nick and I both come from product backgrounds. So, and we've spent some time together in the trenches building software products in a previous life. But what I love about that example is that you took the initiative, and what I what I wrote down as you were talking is you were kind of the MVP. So you understood the problem. You knew the issue at hand is that this data is coming in too late. People aren't getting their checks. There's no real incentive for them to like buy in the moment. And you said, okay, what if I knock on some doors? And so you did that. That's the MVP. You proved that if you just hit them in the moment when they needed to be hit, they bought, right? Or you got an action out of them. Then it sounds like you presented that the company goes, "Hey, Nick's got. It sounds like there's some legs here. We're going to run a beta, so everybody do what Nick did, and let's see what the results are." Right? And you saw a 37% increase in, or 8% increase in sales, and so then it's like, okay, if we just get this in front of the customer or the client in a timely manner and we give them a way to take action on it, we're going to increase our sales and we're actually providing a huge benefit to our resellers, right? So I love that because I think a lot of times people think that we have to start with the base software as the MVP, or we have to build something before we can start testing out an idea or a theory. And I think this applies really well to small business because um, there's a lot of risk. So if you go all in on a certain direction, that could be very costly, and costs really matter in the SMB space. And so what I love about that is that, like, you don't have to have a lot of money, you don't have to have a lot of investment. You can have the idea and think through these simple ways of saying, okay, well, I'm going to do this manually as a human and call up and knock on doors and see what comes through. Prove out your hypothesis which is what you did, which led to the justification and the agreement of like, and the confidence actually to say, yeah, let's go all in on this now because we've kind of like seen that this would work if we were to build it for them. And I just think that's something that gets lost a lot on and especially as we're looking at a future in business where software should become relatively almost free in a sense. You're paying, the costs are going to go way down. You can create custom software that is going to be really specific to your business and your needs potentially. um, can you talk a little bit about beyond Kumo? Where did you go after that, and kind of how did you see your career move beyond Kumo?
I moved over to another company for a few months after Kumo, and then moved to Ignite Design and Advertising. That I really enjoyed that job. I mentioned earlier the camaraderie of a small business.
Yeah.
Uh, during my time there, we worked on all kinds of projects, and there were the variety of things that you worked on in that company were crazy. So one week we'd be doing a flyer for a local middle school, and then you'd find out that the CEO had talked to Joey Ramone about getting the rights
Wow.
to a certain song. So just a lot of crazy changes, and small businesses are very flexible. That's one of the things that really distinguishes them from the big businesses. Is small businesses will find a way to get it done, and um, and can scale from the very small to the very large depending on what a direct customer needs. Um, I had a blast there. I built a lot of data merging tools using Python scripts, trying to get processes streamlined. I was more of a project manager type role there.
Okay.
It was called production management, but basically it's you've got these 100 hours of work and 80 hours to get them done, figure out a way to make it happen. That was a blast. And then um, I know you know him, Phil, called me up and said that Lease Labs was hiring,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, moved down to San Diego to work at Lease Labs with you, and uh, we did quite a bit of work on saving an e-commerce business, which I can go into if you want. Uh,
Yeah, give just a little high level on what Lease Labs was, because I think it plays into kind of the next step from there. What did we do at Lease Labs? What was our market, and where did you fit into that puzzle there?
yes, our product was solutions for multifamily companies, specifically marketing solutions. Websites were a very large part of the business. And then when I was hired, I was asked, there was an e commerce part of that business. It was software as a service and e commerce kind of merged into one. If you would imagine something like a Canva where you can edit flyers and social media advertisements, uh, in a web browser, we had that, but then we also had the ability to go ahead and place an order, and then we would fulfill that for the property management company. And it was run like a small business within the company. Uh, so when I was asked to be CEO of that product, that ended up being actually my my role.
Yeah,
It was fairly accurate. Um, and when I was hired, we were still running on Adobe Flash.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, that and we had hired a contractor to replace it, which Adobe Flash was going to die by the end of
We had a
2020.
real deadline.
We had a real deadline, and so we took extensive notes, but progress was really slow, and we both kind of instinctively knew things were wrong. I remember I played an April Fool's joke on you one year, saying that they said that they weren't going to be able to complete it, and
Yes,
it
not
probably would
funny.
have been better to pull the plug then than as far as we actually went, which is beginning of 2020. And I think once we got into the beginning of 2020, you and I may have thought that maybe we weren't going to make it.
Right.
Um,
It was, yeah,
so
we were not sure.
yeah, we were not sure. But fortunately, in the dead zones when we were waiting for updates from the original contractor to build that, I did a lot of experimentation, some of it with AI. I built a script to get all of our invoices into spreadsheets so that I could cross-reference to see if what we thought we were
Mm,
paying was what we were paying. So we knew the P&L really well. We were able to build out a detailed list of profit and loss for the product, so that the company would know exactly what was at stake, which was
sure.
quite a profitable business. And we also had extensive notes, which I consolidated to build a story of this is when something was promised. This is when it was kind of delivered, but most of them were yellows. A lot of them were red, that things had not been delivered, to build the business case to pull the plug on the contractor that was originally selected and move on to another contractor we knew could get the job done. And we ended up uh, pivoting to the second contractor. We, in the meantime, while we were struggling with the original vendor, we had been acquired by RealPage, and so tried to get all the blockers removed to get the pivot strategy approved. Once we had buy-in from management, we still had to go through layers and layers of management to get approval to hire the new contractor, and then completed that entire transition from Flash to Node.js in about 6 months. And
Yeah, I'm going through the memory bank of that time period because that was a very intense period for a bunch of different reasons.
yeah, it was really scary when we were getting in there, and then uh, going through a late December deployment, which is not the best time to do it, but we got it done. The new system worked. Um, of course, there's always some post launch bugs, but the engineering team was great at squashing them immediately. I think the longest significant bug we had was about 4 hours, and just got that product relaunched. Email campaigns. I made some training videos to make sure that people would know how to use it. Uh, it was really exciting, and I was really excited when that project was completed. That was a major point of celebration.
Yes, and I'll brag about you a little bit in that scenario because I think there's a bunch of really good stuff in this example, Nick. Web to print was an extremely profitable product that no one paid attention to. So I think we can all think of these services or products that we have at our own business where they're just tried and true making money, but they've almost become you almost have taken them for granted as a company because it's just this thing that's working and there's not a lot of flash to it. This software is called Web to Print. I always fashion it close to if people have seen customink.com or a t-shirt designer where you can kind of put a product on the stage and then you can design certain aspects of it. It was kind of a tool like that. And, um, you know, I love the story arc of what we were doing with Lease Labs prior to the acquisition and then what happened after, because I think that that amazing piece of software again got lower and lower prioritized to where, we couldn't even get, the basic resources we needed to keep it alive. And I think this is just a really good example of, if you're sitting here and you're listening and you're thinking about your own small business or your own business and it just feels like chaos. These are 7,000 people organizations and it was just a controlled chaos all the time. I think there was just always, and it's helpful to go back and remember those because you'd think at a large corporation that you'd be able to marshal the resources, make the justification, and that's a lot of what you did there was basically say, I know this is a great product. I need to convince my boss's boss's boss that it's a great product, and I need to convince them in a way that shows that this is, if we lean on this a little bit, this can be a 3x 5x 10x software product, but if we don't, it'll just keep humping along this way. And can you talk through just some of the, like, maybe any differences that you felt before being purchased by RealPage versus after?
Before RealPage, uh, Police Labs was I think we would call it a medium-sized company. It was kind of a growth
Hmm.
phase marketing company,
Yeah.
and it was a blast to work there. It was a lot of fun. It seemed like most people there were friends. We all kind of hung out. We figured out places to go. We were in Bankers Hill, San Diego, which is kind of a pretty happening place if
Yeah.
you walk a couple of blocks one direction or the other. And um, it was just uh, it was a fun place to work. You'd be working there, and people would be tightrope walking over a ravine right out the window, and everyone kind of gathered together to look out there. And uh, it felt like we could really get things done because if you
Sure.
needed something done and you needed approval for something, uh, the decision maker wasn't far away. You could walk over there, and then if they needed more information than you'd have, they'd say, uh, "Can you get this together for me?" I think I think our CFO at the time would do that pretty frequently. She really liked numbers. It felt like you were always pushing in the right direction because you could get things done. When we were acquired by RealPage, it became a lot more challenging, and a lot of that was necessary because when you're a large company, you have a target painted on your back. So when we were acquired by RealPage, all of a sudden we'd find out that a web service would break because someone in the central IT department had locked down a specific port that we needed access to for two applications to talk to each
Right.
other. And figuring out who that person was often a real challenge. It could take a couple of days. Fortunately, we never had any major outages on anything client facing uh, that I can recall directly, but it, everything just took a lot longer to get done because, uh, as I mentioned, that there's a lot of risk involved when you're a very large company because people are aware that you exist. And I think RealPage at one point had one of their acquisitions that kind of got dinged early on in the process. Fortunately, my understanding is nothing significant ever happened as a consequence of that, but it definitely made them much more the overall corporation much more risk averse. But I will
Mhm.
say that even at RealPage, the camaraderie was really good, if not as exciting as at Lease Labs. Uh, I think we met a lot of people that we consider really good working relationships. In a lot of cases, really good friends during our time at RealPage. Uh,
And I totally agree. I think the big differentiator I see is a lot of the friendships still existed on the project and product teams. And you're in the trenches with software engineers and QA analysts, and the whole group is kind of it's kind of a cool culture in and of itself. The big difference, which you kind of remarked on, is in the small to medium business zone. Um, we had maybe one approval where we could get done what we wanted to get done. Where the frustrating part is use a lot of hurry up and wait, and dealing with an organization of that size, the communication gaps are massive. And especially when you have a lot of, you know, RealPage was also a company that was growing by acquisition. So you have a ton of compartmentalized, siloed groups that have not been fully integrated, haven't started, being reformed into teams within the RealPage org. And as a result, I think there's a lot that's missed in communication. And there's just a lot of like stalled progress. And so just to kind of wrap up that whole SMB story, I feel like that's the big differentiator to me, and the one things that keeps bringing me back to small business is just the ability to say, hey, what do you need done? Okay, let's see if we can do that. Looks like we can. Here's the price. Did you want us to do that? Okay, we'll do it. Right. And being able to just make those decisions quickly like that. So after leaving RealPage, you're at your current role now. Um, can you tell me within the organization, as you see more and more of the AI influence, the integration coming, can you tell me a little bit about what your current role is and how you see either, potentially jobs being lost, jobs not being lost? So I think the big fear that everyone has now, and I mean, the news is doing a great job of letting us know about it, but it's that AI is going to take everyone's job much quicker than, say, maybe the way that people looked at the Industrial Revolution, as a job taker, right? Um, I, you know, where do you see it now today in your world, and how do you feel about it?
I have more of a nuanced view of AI and taking everyone's jobs. When I started back in the day, uh, in my corporate career, I started off being basically a spreadsheet jockey. People 40, 50 years ago started off in filing documents away in some cabinet. I think that AI is just going to change the way people do things. And I can give just kind of an example. You gave the Industrial Revolution example, and uh, when I worked at Kumo Tire, our director of marketing at the time one day pulled us into his office, or we visited his office, and he liked to give kind of examples of his business knowledge from being in the industry for 40 years. And he said, they talk about the internet and the digital age as if it totally revolutionized uh, the productivity. And he didn't say productivity, but he said how people work and how efficient we are. And when I look at things and I look at 15 years ago before any of this happened, we were doing the same or more unit sales, similar margins, profitability was the same, and he didn't see the actual outcome
Right.
the uh, from the change to using the internet, from files to using SAP.
The
It just
access to
didn't
the internet. Yeah.
access to the internet or even integration of SAP, which is a software system that's supposed to
Right.
make you way more productive. And from what I understand, economists also don't see the the productivity in the internet. And so for all the talk of the third industrial revolution of the internet, for all of its promises, that it would take us back to the moon, it seems like what the internet really delivered was just a casino. Yes, it increased consumer spending, it grew the economy, it didn't grow productivity. And I can give a couple of examples. This is something that I do really enjoy talking about.
Yeah.
Uh, you post a post on Twitter and you get a thousand likes. Um, when you post again, you get five. The five really feels terrible, and it really encourages you to join into the rat
Mm,
race and get more and more likes. Or you're at work and you go on Amazon. You know you need something. You need a flash drive for some project you're working on after work, and you find that it's same day delivery, but it's $8, and you need to make the $25 cutoff. You have 15 minutes for your break, and so you end up scrolling through Amazon trying to find, okay, what else do I need that is free day shipping? And eventually, you just give up looking for the other item. You pay the $3 premium to have it delivered same day anyway. But now, in those 15 minutes, you've added an hour, hour and a half of cognitive load that burns you out for the next 2 hours you have before lunch.
right.
And so, my guess is that what the internet has done is it's enabled the ability to increase productivity. We implemented a lot of APIs for automatic things to save people time in our time at Lease Labs, but at the same time, it's kind of draining people of their cognitive capabilities to be as productive as they would have been before the internet. And I
Right.
see a lot of that kind of thing possibly happening with AI, where the AI ends up getting used as entertainment for dopamine uh, and cortisol hits to affect the way that people interact with the world, uh, more so than being used for productive use cases. Right now, all I'm seeing are productive use cases, but just looking at the way the internet moved through, uh,
Right.
I think there's a very strong possibility that AI becomes um, much like that. And even when it comes to entry level workers, the news talks about how they're going to be gone. They're probably just going to end up, instead of being sales analysts on spreadsheets, they're going to uh, be checking the AI to make sure that it's not going to make a catastrophic business decision that's going to
Right.
cause a company to go bankrupt. They'll just be the first line of checkers to go through the checklist and make sure that the AI is doing what it's supposed to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love the digital casino because I think what you're trying to illustrate is it speaks to the incentives and like where these algorithms end up going. And I think the social media one is an easy one to talk about, but also a really relevant one because it is probably close, that Amazon is another good example, but it's close to the idea of a casino of where, you know, you're getting you're getting a reaction or you're getting we won or we didn't win, and oh, we didn't win, we gotta play again. We gotta win, right? And I think that was kind of your example, right?
Yes. And really, with social media, one of the things that you will note is that generally it's free. You can freely access it because the way that those servers are paid for is with your eyeballs. So while you're not paying them directly, they're finding how you think. They're figuring out what device you have. They're pushing advertisements to your phone to get you to spend your money and then getting kickbacks that way. Oftentimes, well, usually, I would say, things that you don't actually need to buy. You're being kind of manipulated to do that. With I think there is beginning to be a push for AI to be used the same way to generate advertisements. And my understanding is that some of the companies are figuring out how to put product placement into large language models. So again, free AI, the users are going to become uh, the product as long as they're
Yeah, and I
using it,
think
the free models.
that's the that's the name of the game, right? Like when you don't know when you're not paying any for anything, you're the product. Meaning they want your data, they want your information. And I think, it's not all ugly, right? So having personalization when it comes to advertisements and having things shown to me that I actually might be interested in is not a bad idea on on paper, right? But I think it's kind of what you're speaking to. A over overserved, and then also uh they like this product, so they'll probably like this product, and it's not always just what you want. Um and your decisions are also being pushed by what you're viewing, and I think kind of like the Amazon example. I mean, I've had this experience myself in my personal life where you hop on Instagram for 10 minutes, that's what you intend, and then an hour goes by, and what happened, and I think that speaks to kind of the stickiness of it. I like what you said about data analysis, and that maybe their role is changing. I also have a more optimistic view, and I say this every single podcast. I what I say today could change tomorrow, but when we speak about work, when we speak about how do you get into a business now, if you're just a college graduate and you have a data science background or a computer science background, you know, I don't actually think that you're going to be doing maybe exactly what you learned in college. However, you have an amazing leg up on people. If you already have a background in coding or data analysis and you understand these systems, these code languages, um, pair yourself with AI. I always say you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to somebody that knows AI. And so when I'm interviewing, and I'm talking to somebody, that's one of those questions. How are you using AI today? And I don't care what medium it is necessarily. Because if I know that you're figuring it out and you're understanding how these systems work and these tools works, I mean, even ChatGPT, if you talk to anybody that uses it, they'll give you the very basic way that they use it. I put something in, I get something back, right? That's like, I mean, and this is just one tool, but that's like the surface of what you can do with it. And within just ChatGPT's ecosystem, not even tying it into your own data, like there's a lot of really cool stuff. And so that's what I encourage anybody that's getting out of college now, or looking to hire somebody that is that entry level position. And now maybe you're asking like, "Ooh, do I?" Well, do you want to run the automation or the software that then has to, does the AI and gives you the outputs, but you know, you need people there still, put them together. What's the analysis from it? Present that in a way that the executives or the CEO wants to see it. And you know, if you already have a mind for data science, um, these outcomes make more sense to you, right? You can do more with what it, it, it it's like you're the strategist, it's the output machine for you.
Yes, and you can see when something is wildly off. One of the
Right.
things that I learned at my time of Kumo is they were using us for basically, in a lot of cases, what you just described of creating an output. And my manager's manager, I would take him in and I would show him a spreadsheet, and he would look at it for 10 seconds and say, "This is wrong," because he could see the variation in the data automatically.
Right.
So if you do have that background, if you at least have a basic ballpark idea of what number AI should be putting out, then you're at a much lower risk of subjecting your company to an AI hallucination, which um, in the decision making process can be quite costly.
Yeah, yeah. So, you're at a very large corporation now. What how are you guys, um, how how are you guys thinking about AI? Do you use AI internally, as an organization? Does the company have a policy? I'm really interested in understanding how both small business, but even really large corporate entities think about how they're going to introduce AI and any of the guardrails that you put on, just having employees simply using it. I mean, we have concerns about PII. If you're going to be putting client data into something that's maybe a free tool versus an enterprise paid tool. How does your corporation, and even within your role, how do you see it?
Yes, right now, the way we do have access to AI, it is the way that people are using it is a bit wild westy. People are finding different
That's good to
ways to
know.
use. Yeah, they're finding ways to use it and then sharing it with everyone else to make sure that that we start to formulate best practices a little bit more from the ground up. From the top down, those software systems are an enterprise paid version because the the paid versions allow options such as locking out the data for training. So you mentioned
Yes.
that information being used for training. When you're in a large corporation, you don't want certain secrets getting out, trade secrets going to your competition. If your data is used for that, for training the algorithm, then your trade secrets are not trade secrets anymore. They belong
Right.
to everyone who uses that bot. Um, and Also, the risk in my particular role, there's basically zero risk of this. But if someone puts information like PII, now all of a sudden for those who don't know, that's personal identifiable information. There are a lot of regulations around keeping people's names, addresses, social security numbers, that kind of thing, which we don't house, fortunately, so we don't have to worry as much about it. But that PII, if it goes into the algorithm, who knows where in the AI that lives? And if uh, for corporations, you're supposed to retain the ability to delete any PII that
Yes.
someone has for people who live in California, Virginia, and a couple other states. Uh, how do you guarantee that you can delete that from the algorithm? It's a huge risk, and so it's very important to uh, and very insightful that that my organization made sure to exclude that type of information from getting into the training data for AI. But it is a bit wild westy. A lot of the best practices that we share are things like prompt engineering.
Great.
So a lot of people just ask questions. They say, "Hey, what about this?" And I do this too. I ask a question and then I go back and forth with the chat bot, adding in additional criteria. But if you have repetitive decisions that need to be made, it's good to have please analyze XYZ and give this kind of output, and then uh, a list of bullet points of constraints. It's like exclude these specific situations, account for. I was talking to a chatbot the other day about the cost of moving. It's like, okay, well, account for our use of the amenities in this building and then the tax implications of a move and
Mhm.
then the cost of moving and XYZ. By the time that I got done with that conversation, I could have had a full list and gotten the answer out immediately. It's like these are my
Right.
constraints. Um,
Right. Yeah,
um,
it's
s-
uh I mean, I heard some stat not too long ago that there was 60,000 plus keywords ranking on Google for ChatGPT, and this was coming from people using just public free GPT accounts and sharing their chats with, maybe another team member, maybe a family member, a friend. But what they weren't realizing is that those were creating public links that then were indexable by Google. And so uh, there's been a lot of Reddit forums where they're just, I mean, laughing about API keys, passwords, social security numbers, stuff people are putting in there that is just now public, and people aren't aware of that. And so I think, you know, um, the enterprise approach is the best approach. All of the major companies now sell that enterprise offering. If you're a smaller business, the paid accounts, team business accounts, absolutely do not let your team just use, because as Nick said, it's still a little wild westy where he's at, but you can be a little wild westy when you know that the data is protected and your infrastructure and your ecosystem's closed off a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
Um, and it's just, and ChatGPT particularly does a lot of stuff. They put a lot of Easter eggs into their outputs. The one thing I always tell people is if you're trying to get your chatbot or whatever to talk more like you and less like everybody else now, it's like removing M dashes, putting custom instructions to remove M dashes, bolded text amid the content. There's telltale signs, but in the free, one thing that we notice is a client of ours had sent over some content that they had written with ChatGPT. And what I found was it had interlinked some pages of the website. Well, on each one of the links, ChatGPT had appended it with its own UTM parameter. And for anybody who doesn't know, a UTM parameter is basically attributing a source to where that content was either created, or creating a source back to where that link came from. And so you now have ChatGPT like becoming a source of link clicks through your site, which is not something you want.
Yeah. Yeah, that's UTM parameters are, and I did tons of UTM parameters at Lease Labs, but those are um, those are very, very tracky type things,
Yes.
and they come after the question mark on anything, and on any shareable links. Uh, there's something that I like to remove because for just sharing Amazon products with my friends, because it allows Amazon to say, "Hey, here's a network of people. Look, we know this
Right.
person, Nick Henkey. They shared this, and then they shared it with Nick Adams, and so clearly they're
Right. They
having a
can.
conversation, and everything kind of ties together. And none of that data is well, that data is private against the public sector, but a lot of that stuff is loaded into surveillance. So
Right. And I think that's maybe a good point to leave on is what companies are doing now, like the really big ones, the data companies, they're just hoovering data. So it doesn't necessarily, they don't care what it is, they just want to collect it all. And I think China's probably a really good at this. Um, but they don't care because we are creating tools, we are creating software, we're creating AI that can now make connections between this data, analyze, use without teams of people and hours of, months and months of analysis. It's like they can make these connections, they can analyze and pull patterns out, match patterns, and present this stuff. And so I think, the data that's been collected for the last decade is going to become, this is what these companies are using to make now their products more stickier, more addictive, more clicky. And we're just going to see more and more of that. So,
yeah,
um,
and really uh, the goal, like you said, with the gathering of that information is to separate you and your money. Um, that's the end thing. So surveillance, it's always been here. It always will be, from a beyond corporate level. But from the corporate level, these companies, if they really know you really well, they can really, uh, if you have the right mentality, they can strip you of everything. A fool and his money is soon parted, is the old phrase
yep,
for that. So
yep. So yeah. So to sum up, you know, I think this discussion around the last part about AI, I think it's a blessing and a curse. And I think what I have my team do, and it sounds like you at your company is doing the same, is play. Like learn this, like understand how it works, share with other people, learn how to get better at outputs that make you better at your job, learn how to build things that take the repetitive tasks that you do that your boss maybe shouldn't be paying you for because it doesn't take anything up here, right? It's just repetitive manual labor, and creating efficiencies for yourself so that you can make yourself more valuable, more marketable, and also reducing some of the stuff that we used to do that just is god awful and we don't want to do it. I think if I were to look at you, the analysis of the data is what really is interesting. It's probably not the best to string it all together and have to build how do we map it to each other. It's more like I want to start looking at the data and getting insights and then making decisions on where I want my product to go based on what these are. I don't want to have to pull down and map 6 Google Sheets together and make sure they all flow to one so that the upload works, right?
Yeah, and really, when you talk about those efficiencies, if AI is ever going to show up in the productivity data, like has been promised at this point, like was promised with the internet and not really delivered, we need people to figure out ways to create efficiencies with it. And um, the hope there is that if you can increase productivity, that can help everyone. That could potentially create more jobs because you end up with more degrees of specialists to go down.
Mm,
Might be
yeah.
a painful road in between, but
Yeah, and I think it will be. Like,
yeah.
I think it's okay that we can admit that it's going to be painful. Um, what if you had to predict, say 5 years from now, this is a very tough question to answer, so this is just whatever you think. But where do you think we are 5 years from now, and maybe 10 years? Do you think that we've developed much further? Are there agents working at every company and there's employees that are full on just agents doing a job title that someone used to have? Where do you see it going when you daydream about it?
I have a hard time making that prediction because there is an outside possibility that AI starts to stagnate. Um, and the reason why I say that is because there's a physical limit.
Infrastructure.
There's a physical limit to how many transistors you can put into a chip, and we're getting very, very, very close to that limit. So it's possible that ChatGPT or all of these large language models, get 10 or 20 times more powerful and never uh, move on from there. And I, um, agentic AI, two LLMs that can kind of talk to each other, is one of the next things that people want to do because then you can have the AIs kind of cross check each other. I don't know how well that would work with a model that is 10 or 20 times more powerful than the current one. It could be marginally better than our current limits of agentic AI, because people have a lot of ingenuity. If they have constraints, they figure out a way to make it work as well as possible. Um,
Right.
so it or it might make it just kind of a mediocre tool that can work in some use cases but not all. Um, so it's 5 years from now, I think the large language models will be more powerful. So a small company can have very professional looking copywriting without having to hire a copywriter. So those
Right.
jobs are at risk. But as far as overall changing the business landscape, it's possible. Uh, it- uh, but um,
You don't see
I
it yet today.
no, I don't see it with the current models today, and
Yeah.
a lot of that has to do with we talked about prompt engineering. It takes a lot of effort to be able to engineer a prompt, and a lot of thought processes as far as what your constraints are. and even then, it's only useful in very specific use cases where you need a paragraph written that explains something to you.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so
Yeah, I
or
think we
copy being written,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, or being written for someone else, a different audience.
Yeah, well, I was gonna just expand on that because I think that's the way we see it internally for us, right? So there's hyper specific microservices that we want to um, be able to do, and I think content's a perfect one. We've been working on a software piece that will deliver content autonomously for all of our clients um, through a highly specific prompt that knows everything about them, and then also the user prompt itself is highly complex that details every aspect of the output that we want. And you know, the it's not building software anymore the same way that we talked about web to print a little bit earlier. Okay. But it doesn't mean that you don't need to invest. The more that you invest upfront to train on your data, the output that you want, test, till you're getting, a prompt, say a prompt that is working 95% of the time or 99% of the time is giving you the output you want. This is a lot of work involved to do that. And it's one of the things that, like, for me, I think is separating, the hobbyists from the experts in business right now is who's taking it and really investing that time in order to get those actual outputs that you want.
Yeah, and get it. Yeah, like you said, it takes a lot of time to get in there, uh, to get those prompts maximized. And I think you touched on something else. There is hyper specific items. I do think we'll find some more tools that are hyper specific AI. I know I mentioned earlier back in 2019, I was using what is an AI tool. It's called OCR. 3 years before supposedly AI was a thing, because when people think AI, they think large language models, and that's really not true. It's an older technology than that. These are just very specific
Yeah.
systems.
Well, great, Nick. Tell everyone where they can contact you or meet up with you. And any last words from your end?
Um, yeah, so you could find me. I have a YouTube channel. It's just my name, Nicholas Henkey. Uh, being totally transparent, I do not post there very often. Right now, we have two young children, so they keep our hands
Being a
very, very
dad for the
full.
moment. Yeah, being
Yeah,
a dad for the moment.
uh, but it is a cool place. I like to talk about my hobbies. I talk about the internet casino. Um, one of these days, I'd like to post some videos about ham radios, or in this case, I found out about this thing called Meshtastic radio,
Oh, nice.
which are like self networking radios, so they have really good range.
Very cool.
Um, but uh, Yeah, it's just as I find a couple of minutes to flesh out an idea and to hit record, then I do it. But it's been a challenge as of late.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. I like the way your mind works and the things that you dig into and go deep on, and so I've always appreciated about you with that. So Nick, thank you so much. This is a great conversation. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Nick. Have a great
Cool.
one. Bye.
Okay, stay on.
Yeah.